Now, from the most trusted names in local news, KDPG Sunday Edition.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us on the KDPG Sunday Edition. I'm Ken Rice. This has been a week like no other in recent memory. Last Monday, the peacefulness of the campus of Virginia Tech in the Blacksburg, Virginia community was shattered when a gunman began a calculated killing spree. That rampage ended when the gunman took his own life, but with it were the lives of 32 others, students and faculty, and a horrific crime that also left 21 others wounded. Even more horrifying, perhaps, the news that the gunman was no stranger, but rather someone from the Virginia Tech student body. This morning on the KDPG Sunday Edition, a close look at what happened at Virginia Tech. A little later in the broadcast, we'll talk about the healing process and meet a Virginia Tech student from Upper St. Clair and a man who has counseled others after another major national tragedy. So many times during this difficult week, we have asked ourselves, what could have caused someone to commit such an unspeakable crime? We begin with two men with experience in both law enforcement and community mental health. Lawrence Likar is an associate professor and chair of the Department of Justice, Law, and Security at La Roche College. He spent 23 years as a special agent for the FBI, including work as the supervisor of the Violent Crime Squad. Also here, Jim Jacobson, medical director of Mercy Behavioral Health. As always, David Shribman, executive editor of the Post-Gazette, joins us for our discussion. Gentlemen, welcome. And I think what a lot of people are trying people are struggling with this question. Is this individual, Seung-Hee Jo, is this someone who is sick or someone who is evil?
You know, it's impossible and wrong to try to diagnose somebody from news clips and, you know, images that we see on the news. You really need to do a comprehensive evaluation and look at the history and so forth. But certainly in what we're seeing, this was a very troubled individual, had issues throughout his life, but at the same time, at least I feel there was something evil going on too.
Would the evil have surfaced were it not for all the factors we've heard about in his life? Feeling isolated, no friends. Some teachers and professors said he was the loneliest person they had ever encountered. Is it possible that this could have been a normal person who was created, a monster was created because of the factors that, the circumstances of his life?
That's hard to say. I mean, you know, what's first, the chicken or the egg? Is this an individual that had these problems and then the violence and so forth manifested later on, or is it the other way around? I mean, everybody's different, and certainly with the information that's out there now, it's hard to tell.
He had been observed, Dr. Jacobson, by mental health professionals down there in Virginia. Is it possible that this could have been prevented? Should this have been prevented?
It's hard to say, and, you know, again, without knowing his history, but one thing that's certainly very important to communicate to people is that violence among people with mental illness is very rare. This is not what we see. This is an aberration, the same way it's an aberration with people without mental illness. More frequently, people who have mental illness are the victims of crimes, or more vulnerable, or people who act a little perhaps different and strange and can't defend themselves and are the victims of street crimes and other acts of violence. So I do want people to understand that, you know, this connection is not there. This is somebody who probably had some issues, as you heard on the news, with how he behaved and how he didn't communicate, and was certainly very much of a loner. But that in itself is not any type of cause or reason that explains the violence. On
the tape, he mentions Eric and Dylan, referring to the Columbine killers. Does that suggest to you that somehow a seed was planted and perhaps that this will do the same for somebody else in the future?
There are certainly copycats out there, and I'm sure you have experience and can comment on that. And it's hard to know exactly why that is, but, you know, there have been bomb threats called in yesterday, and people who, for whatever reason, just sometimes want their 15 minutes of fame or feel more important by copying what's happening. And that's always a risk, but on the other hand, it's important to get information out. And, you know, I think in a free society, you certainly want to communicate, and that's very important.
About that, Dr. Jacobson?
Well, I wanted to get back, too, about the question about community mental health and if that would have helped or stopped this from happening. As I said, you really don't know it's a particular case, but one thing that we do know, and I'm hoping one positive in this horrible tragedy thing that happens, is an understanding for the need for, improved funding and more resources for community mental health. In this individual, would it have made a difference? Who knows? But for many individuals, it certainly can make a difference. And I think in other horrible cases like this, sometimes people did not get help. Some people don't have the resources and unable to be seen and to be treated appropriately. So, this is something that we really need to look at. It's hard to recruit people into the field, into community mental health. It's hard to get funding. Resources get cut here in Allegheny County or in the region. Mayview State Hospital is being downsized, and people with severe illnesses will be out in the community. And it's always great to have somebody in a least restrictive environment, but we need to have the funds to properly treat people and to work with people, and that's something we need to definitely note.
We're gonna have to leave it, unfortunately, right there. Larry Leichhardt and Jim Jacobson, thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate